All right, so this is a reminder to go back and watch video 1. There are some things that I'll reference in there that I'm not going to go into detail here, but a couple of them apply. The first is that this is a print ad for a magazine rather than a poster, so some of your text size will need to be adjusted accordingly. You have this idea of these graphics here, and I think that that's an interesting concept, but this big area of emphasis that you've created is being used with a bunch of little different pieces of information, and there's legibility problems. So we've added drop shadows, which is on our do list, as well as adding outlines to text. So we'll need to make those adjustments there. Right now the stroke on the egg is really, really thick. You could have the eggs without a stroke and just have them be a little bit more of like a flat feel, kind of like you have your dots on this. That could be an interesting way to have that graphic included. I would actually suggest moving brunch with the bunny into this area and then using this space for the details, and having them, left aligned with wherever the brunch with the bunny and egg hunt is. Right now it just reads brunch bunny, by the way, so we need to kind of couch this information closer to here. You could, when you move it in here, you might be able to kind of shift the baseline a little bit as you've done here. So remember with your visual hierarchy, the things that are most important, second most important, etc. This information is probably not as important as its billing is here, so think about where you might be able to place that instead. Okay. This picture is really cute, and it's a fun find. Make sure that it does have print quality, as everybody needs to make sure that theirs are ready for print. You do have some issues with the internal margin here, so make sure that you are paying attention to that video 1 information. I would suggest photoshopping out the name of this because it does make me want to read it with the placement that it has. So you can easily remove that using the tools you have from Photoshop. And then we don't want to add outlines to text, and definitely not on text that is harder to read just by its nature. So we have a lot of different colors that are going on here as well. I would suggest streamlining that. So you might be able to cut this saucer out and just use that inside the design, like perhaps here or something along those lines, so that you have a little bit more flexibility, and then you wouldn't have the legibility issues that you have in this spot. So right now we also have things that are left aligned and center aligned and right aligned, but not strictly lining up with the things that are near it. So I think making adjustments would continue to strengthen the concept that you've developed with this picture. Okay, so with this, I like the idea of, I think you can really use illustration well, that this one looks a little underdeveloped. So I think it'd be a little bit less hard to work with if you actually used a smaller, oh, that's not what I meant to do. Use the image smaller so that you can really have more space for the information that you need. You will have to look at the text size requirements because some of this is going to be too large. Also, this typeface here is the pink is harder to read on the brown, and this typeface is harder to read at a smaller size. So you can use it this size, but using it this size is more problematic. So we have center aligned, we have right aligned here, left aligned here, center aligned down here. So it would be stronger if you were to use the space a little bit differently and include a stronger sense of alignment throughout. Okay, I really like the minimalist approach that you have. That's an interesting approach to this ad, and I think that you've pulled it off pretty well. Just a couple of thoughts, really. One being that you have kind of created this nice justified feel as far as your alignment there. That could also apply down here. So instead of being center aligned, you could justify this text. And I think that that would kind of keep this nice narrow column that you have going on there. I would move maybe that time a little closer to the date proximity wise so it doesn't feel as disconnected. And then down here, I think if you repeated the all caps treatment that you have up there, it'd give it kind of a nice parallelism. But I do think it's an interesting technique to do this. The color is a little sedate. So with something like treat bags and bouncy houses, maybe a more punchy color might be interesting. Okay, this one has lots of cool color in it, which I think is good. And I like that if you needed to use a tool like this, that you didn't just center it. I think that's kind of a cool choice. So right now my one thought, and this might be an issue with the typeface that you use, but this package, it looks like you've started to do something interesting with how things are fitting together. But I'm losing the brunch and bunnies. If you start with something that has a big ampersand, it leads me to think like, well, what is this stuff that comes before it? And then it's a little bit disjointed as far as the rest of the text. So it could be more intentional if you were to maybe align with like the top of the G, so you could kind of see how the text relates to this object here, since the G's kind of create a really strong sense of alignment in that way. That's my one thought. And then this square that you have you tried it with it just like instead of having an opacity just being white, or maybe the color of this backdrop or something along those lines? It just gets really busy over here where all these details are. So a really cool concept. I think it just hinders legibility a little bit. So I'd play around with that and see if you can make it more legible.